So, how do we feed our cities? You'd think it's just a question of logistics, trucks and supply chains, but it turns out it's actually one of the most tangled, complex challenges we face. And the solution? Well, it might not be what you think at all. Let's dig in.
First, just to get a sense of the scale we're talking about here, by 2050, it's projected that 68% of the entire world's population is going to be living in cities. That is a staggering number. It puts this immense, almost unimaginable pressure on the systems that feed us all.
And this isn't just a complicated problem. No, it's what systems thinkers call a wicked problem. Now, what does that mean? It means there's no single right answer. The solutions are only better or worse, and how you even frame the problem in the first place depends entirely on your values.
So the crucial point here is that we can't solve this with a bigger truck or a fancier spreadsheet. The old school top-down approaches, they just don't cut it anymore. The problem is literally woven into the fabric of our culture, our economy, and our environment.
The research behind this explainer points to a pretty radical shift in how we need to think. It argues that the key ingredient we've been missing all along isn't some new technology or policy, it's something much more fundamental. It's us. It's our shared values and our collective identity.
And this slide really gets to the heart of that shift. We have to stop seeing people as just stakeholders, separate groups with their own competing transactional interests. Instead, we need to engage everyone as citizens, as members of a community, all motivated by shared values and a common vision for a better future.
The sociologist Hans Joas really nails it with this quote. Our values aren't just opinions we hold. They're at the very core of who we are. They come from our life experiences, and when we tap into them together, they become these incredibly powerful motivators for action.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do we actually put it into practice? How could we possibly map out a new way of doing things that's driven by values? Well, luckily, the researchers behind this work developed a model to help us visualize all these moving parts.
And here it is. It's called the turtle model, and it's a really brilliant framework for understanding all the forces at play when you're trying to transform something as massive as a food system. Just think of it as our map for navigating this whole complex challenge. So, first up, you've got the turtle's 4 limbs. These are the actors who actually create the movement. You have 4 key groups that absolutely have to work together. You've got the government, private industry, academic researchers, and of course, civil society, which is all of us, the citizens.
Okay, so what gets those limbs moving? Well, those are the push drivers, kind of like the turtle's head pushing everything forward. Think of things like new food safety regulations, or big info campaigns about unsustainable fishing, or even new technologies that change how food is made. These are the forces that create the motivation to change.
But just being motivated isn't enough, right? You need a direction. And that's where the pull drivers come in. These are the forces that give the change a direction to go in. They can be market-based, like a sudden demand for organic food, or incentive-based, like government subsidies. But the most powerful one, and the one we're really focused on today, is the visionary pull. That's a shared, value-based vision of the future. And finally, this whole system is operating inside the turtle's shell. The shell represents all the big external barriers and constraints that the actors can't easily control. We're talking about huge things like climate change, global pandemics, or those deep-seated power imbalances in the food industry. The turtle has to navigate all of this to actually move forward.
So, that's the turtle model in theory. But the real question is, does it actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at a fantastic case study from Dublin, Ireland, that put this exact framework into action to totally reshape their city's relationship with the sea.
So here was the problem. Ireland is an island nation, surrounded by water. Yet people in Dublin weren't eating a lot of local seafood. And the fish they did eat was mostly the unsustainable kind, predators at the top of the food chain like salmon and cod. The challenge was to get people to shift their habits toward more sustainable options.
The Food Smart Dublin project came at this with such a brilliant 6-stage approach. I mean, they didn't just lecture people. No, they dug into archives to find old, forgotten recipes, they worked with top chefs to give them a modern twist, and they got everyday citizens directly involved in testing, tasting, and learning.
And would you look at that? All 4 limbs of the turtle were moving perfectly in sync. You had Trinity College Dublin leading the research. You had the city government providing context. You had a famous chef representing the food industry. And you had an environmental nonprofit getting citizens involved. It was a perfect collaboration.
So what was the secret sauce?
What was the most powerful force driving all this change? It wasn't new regulations. It wasn't just market demand. The crucial driver, the real key, was that visionary pull. The project tapped into a shared vision of Dublin as a proud, sustainable city that was connected to the sea.
What they did was so smart. They connected the past to the future. They used forgotten bits of their food heritage, not for some cozy nostalgia, but to build a new food identity, one that was rooted in their history, but was totally focused on creating a more sustainable future. So what can we all learn from this turtle and from Dublin's amazing success story? Let's really boil this down to the big takeaway. The main lesson here is that our values and our identity, they aren't just soft, fluffy concepts. The turtle model shows that they can actually be the most practical and powerful engine for real, lasting change. A shared vision can literally pull an entire community forward. And this quote just brilliantly captures the whole shift in thinking we need. The old saying is, you are what you eat, right? Which is a very individualist, consumerist idea. The new mantra, the new way of thinking needs to be, we are what we grow. It's all about collective identity, shared creation, and building a future together. Which really just leaves us with one final question to think about. What story does your city's food tell about who you are? And maybe more importantly, what story do you want it to tell in the future?